Hey friends, and welcome back to Stronger Every Day. So today I want to talk about a topic that I hear, and I've heard it in almost every field that I've worked in, and that is don't bring your work home with you. Right? And while I agree with that to an extent, for petty things, petty arguments, petty situations, petty things that don't really amount to anything, if in the grand scheme of life mean nothing, I agree. You shouldn't bring your work home with you. However, sometimes there's things that we see or that we hear or that we experience that our spouse does need to know about. Taking the law enforcement side of it, really any emergency service, so fire, police, EMS, rescue squad, dispatch, the ER, obviously armed forces. There's some things that you see and or hear that are horrendous. It's terrifying and devastating, the things that we can do to one another, or the things that can happen because of an accident. And as a person in that situation, do you need to go home and tell your spouse every detail of losing an infant, to being beat, to having its ribs broken and its arms and legs and having lacerations, that it was strangled to death and starved? Do you need to go home and tell your spouse every ounce of that information? No. But what you should do is let them know that you lost an infant today, and it was not in a natural way, and that you would like to talk about it, or at least process it, or at least let them know that if you're quiet or if you seem a little sad or a little distant, that you're communicating with them and letting them know it's not something you've done. It's something that's happened, that's been major. To tell someone in that instance, don't take your work home with you, what ends up happening is the devil has a field day with that. Because when major things like that happen and we don't talk about it, number one, it's going to affect you mentally, emotionally, physically. Every ounce of you is going to be affected when you stuff something tragic under the rug. Number two is it's going to create a distance between you and your spouse. And so they don't understand what's going on or why you're acting different. And so they're internalizing that they've done something wrong, that it's something in the marriage, or that they're not measuring up anymore, and you're unhappy with them. You're trying to deal with what you're dealing with on your own. And when that's not working, then you've already given the devil a stronghold. And so then your partner, or somebody you work closely with, somebody you're around at work every day, somebody that experienced maybe the same thing, you start talking to them. And then there's a closeness, and there's a bond there. There's an emotional trauma there, and then you're not talking to your spouse about it, so you've in essence segregated them, and now you're talking to this person that you work with, and you're grieving the situation together, and you're becoming closer and closer. And then you think, why is my spouse, they're not being there for me, they're not understanding. I don't want them to understand. I don't want to tell them anything. But then you're upset at them for not being there for you, and they know nothing about the situation because you haven't spoke to them. But then you're growing closer and closer to this person, and further and further away. And then you're actually angry with your spouse because they're not there for you. They don't know they need to be. And then the affair starts, right? Then the breaking of families, the breaking of vows, the breaking of God's will for us comes into play in our family, all because we're told, sweep it under the rug, shut your mouth, and move on. One of the things that I've heard over and over is, and I've been this person most of my life, is just keep your mouth shut and keep the peace. Growing up in my home, that's what you did. You kept your mouth shut, and there was not a lot of peace, but you tried to not make anybody angry. And so, whose peace are you keeping, though? It's certainly not yours. It's the aggressors. And there's very little peace in their life anyway. I came from a family where everything was out in the open. It was blurted out loudly, boldly, every circumstance. Now, there was not always a talking conversation, right? But it was out in the open. To when I married into Nick's family, their family doesn't talk about anything. So I went from one extreme to the other. And so Nick and I are learning how to be in the middle of that. And it's hard for me, for someone who has struggled with major depression disorder and anxiety, to talk to Nick about the literal thoughts that are going in my mind, because those are typically not good. They're not warm and fuzzy. They're not comfortable. They're very uncomfortable. It's hard for me to open up and talk to him about that. When I worked at one of the doctor's offices I worked for, and we saw some things that were results of domestic violence, and those are difficult to see, and you never unsee those. When I worked as a dispatcher, I did a lot of ride-alongs with the officers. I feel it's very important in whatever field you're in that you experience each other's position. So for me, riding with the police or with EMS or with the fire, and then having them come and dispatch and listen to what we go through, and then us understanding what they go through, helps us be a better community of people. But the things that I saw and the things that I heard are never going to leave me. They're always going to be there. Lost a lot of people, and that's never going to be not a part of my story. But not communicating to my spouse about major events is not what our answer needs to be. Now, do I need to come home and tell him that Sally Joe said that my hair looked bad today and it just upset me for the rest of the day, or I broke a nail and I'm just infuriated, or the copier jammed or the computer jammed and now I'm just a wreck? No, that stuff it's not going to matter tomorrow. But the stuff that is going to matter, talk to your spouse. Don't segregate what you're going through. Don't segregate yourself and your spouse from each other. That's where right then, that's where the devil's in it. And he's separating you and causing a foothold. And then when you don't fix that foothold, he's going to start opening that path to someone else that you can connect with, because maybe they've already experienced it, or they know something similar. And that's where things start happening. I've said before, affairs typically do not start in the bedroom. Now, if you go look for a lady of the evening, but typically affairs don't start in the bedroom. They start with, hey, how are you? Or, I'm so sorry to hear about. Or, well, you can always talk to me. Or, let's go grab lunch. Or, I brought you a cup of coffee. They typically start more on the innocent side, and then it goes into a full-blown affair. But when we're keeping important life-changing events from our spouse because we don't want to hurt them, and like I've said, do you need to tell them every detail? No, but tell them what's happened. I did CPR on a husband today with his wife and 4 kids standing there screaming, begging me to save him, and he didn't make it. tell them what the gist of what's happened. Let them be there for you. We've got to stop as a society of trying to tell ourselves that we need to squash any kind of emotion at all, or any kind of feelings. There's nothing wrong with having feelings and emotions. It's what you do with it once you have them, right? There's sometimes you need to be angry about a situation. There's sometimes you need to be excited about a situation. There's sometimes you're going to be sad about a situation. There's sometimes you're going to be mad about a situation. There's sometimes you're going to be confused. It's what you do once that happens, right? And I can't stand that saying, and I hear it a lot. You know, now that we're here, that I moved to where my husband's from, and we volunteer for an agency, and I don't know how many times I've heard that in the course of, we've been there a little over 3.5 years. I don't know how many times I've heard that. Don't take it home with you. Don't take your work home with you. Don't take this place home with you. And every time that I've heard that said in the circumstance that it's been said, I've thought to myself, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Now, Nick and I are on this particular organization together, so we are typically there together. Now, there's sometimes where I'm somewhere and he goes to a call, or he's somewhere and I go to a call, that we're not together, but typically we are together. We still to this day have this macho, you know, if you can, and I love some of those old movies. I don't know if I can say the name on here, but Mel Gibson is in it, and Danny Glover, if that tells you which one I'm talking about. You know, you're going, go, you're getting hit with this and hit with that, and your shoulders popped out of joint, and you know, this happens, you fall from a building, you get hit by a truck, and you just keep going, and you know, you know, you're handling 15 different bad guys, and then, you know, and there's never any, you know, any logical thing that would actually happen in that situation. Like after the first thing, you would be pulled from the scene, you know. And the macho, I don't need a break. If you ever look back at that particular movie, he's dealing with some mental health issues. But it's that, you know, that we're supposed to be macho and never stop and never need to talk about things. And even like in our armed forces, I was talking to one of my relatives the other day, and they were saying, you know, yes, there's where you can talk to someone in a situation that happens, but you're at that point you're almost blackballed and ostracized from your unit and from any important task, because you're deemed not mentally healthy if you have to actually talk to someone. So yes, that service is there for you, but you would be shamed into using it. And that's not different in a lot of different professions out there. You know, yours might be something completely different. Maybe it's that, you know, something's happened and the retirement fund for all of your employees has been stolen. And you've got, whether it's 5 or 5,000 employees that you're having to try to figure out, what are you going to do? You know, how are you going to make this better? What's going to happen? Maybe it's, you know, that your business is going to go bankrupt. You know, you've tried, you've struggled, you've done as much as you can, but you have 500 employees, and now what are you going to do? It doesn't have to be like the, you know, the emergency services type thing. It can be lots of different situations that can happen. Nurses, it's not easy for them when they're losing patients, whether it's expected or not expected. It's very difficult. Family, it's a daily occurrence that Robert, one of our roosters, comes up on our back deck and just starts crowing for no apparent reason other than to let me know that he's out there, which then gets the inside 4-legged dogs fired up. Ruthie, that's the life of filming at home. But so I just wanted to put this out there that, friends, don't keep important life-changing things to yourself. Talk to your spouse, and if you don't have a spouse, talk to someone. If you have to do it anonymously, talk to someone anonymous. If you feel like you can't go through your employment because it'll be deemed as a weakness, then do it on a secret level, right? But just talk to someone. Don't keep all that inside. Friends, I end every video this way. It is always my heart and hope that you feel this. God loves you. I love you. Your family loves you. Your friends love you. And we need you here. Robert says goodbye. We'll see you in the next one, friends. Bye.